Welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint. I am your host, James Just. With me tonight is John Cameron. All right, so, John, our spy agencies are something we've been talking about here over years now at this point. Our spy agencies have kind of run out of control. So what's the latest news that we've kind of been talking about here on these? What's the latest on this?
Should we talk about what they're doing in, let's say, Brazil, maybe? Or do you want to talk about what they're doing here? Apparently, the CIA and the FBI and all of the rest of them are actually working in cahoots with some rather interesting types like Soros and, is it Odemeyer?
Oh, I can't never pronounce these names,
yeah,
John.
He's one of the original investors in PayPal.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one good original investor in PayPal, and that was a guy named Elon. But the rest of them are a little scary. So what they've done, for example, in Brazil, and this is the information we got is from Substack, from Public. That's Schellenberger. That's his picture up on the screen. Very good man. So in Brazil, the NGOs in cahoots with the government, backed by probably our government, are stated that opposition to the current leader was fomented. Basically, they were fomenting rebellion, and said that the opposition people, including Mr. Schellenberger, were doing all these underhanded things and stated them as fact and pushed it out into the news media. And these various NGOs, which are funded by people like Soros and the Open Society and the rest of that, take the information and then self-support each other, talking about what a great job the other NGO is doing, bringing these horrible things that the right-wing crazies are doing to try to topple the government. And they support each other, stated as fact. And then it turns out that there are no facts, that they just made it up, it's unsupported, and even if it is unsupported and proved to be unsupported, they still keep it up as if it's fact. Kind of like what happened here with the Steele dossier, made up out of thin air and then supported and pushed by the intelligence agency, and that's going on in Brazil. And it's really tough because the guy, like, second in power there is the head of their Supreme Court, and he acts like I don't know what, an emperor. So he decides what can be published and what can't. And then also these NGOs are funding the news media that's supporting, like, the major newspaper in Brazil is being funded by the Open Society people and others who are promoting these lies as truth. And then the other public media that are also supported by, probably a little bit by CIA and other NGOs, just self-support. And as if, oh, here's the truth, yes, this is the truth, they're bad. Oh, it's being reported over here, and we agree with it. And then this person says, oh, well, we agree with what they're saying. And it's just insidious, and there's really no way to counter it. But it's just lies and damn lies.
Yeah,
I think I've made a very confusing case for this, but anybody wants to sign up for Public Michael Schellenberger's piece, he'll give you the exact part of it.
It's a confusing set of issues, right?
Yeah.
And deliberately so. They've created a tangled web of weaves, so it's hard to untangle all this and figure out who's pulling what strings. That's the whole deliberate conspiracy. We'll call it a conspiracy of all this.
It is a conspiracy, and it was all about the Twitter files being released about what was going on in Brazil. So they said that they were lies promoted by Schellenberger. Schellenberger didn't even know the Twitter files were going to be released. So it's a little hard for him to, have been part of the conspiracy. But it's, kind of like what we're finding out about some of our head health officials here in the U.S. But it's the same old thing over and over again, and it's 1984 stuff.
Yeah.
It really is scary because it's just a lie repeated and supported by another lie that never gets overturned because all the fact-checking agencies are left-leaning. There's no objective fact-checking agency out there. As a matter of fact, they've admitted, I think Google and all the rest of the big boys and girls have admitted that, oh, our fact check's just opinion. So unless you have the actual recording and the actual copies of emails that go back and forth and all the rest of that, and then people just deny them and call them fakes. So it's bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So I encourage you to go out and look into what our governments and our intelligence agencies are out there actually doing.
And the thing about it is, especially the stuff they're doing, this is talking about stuff they're doing in a foreign country.
Just think of what they're doing here.
You know, it says right in the right in the rules that when they formed the CIA that it couldn't do things domestically, but it is.
Yeah.
And CIA is directly responsible, along with our government, for overturning 7 foreign countries' legitimate governments, and indirectly in about, well, can't really prove it, in about 63 other cases. So they're basically our intelligence agencies, which are supposed to provide intelligence, are actually directly involved in change, orchestrating change.
Rather than giving us information, they're actually out there manipulating the world and then turning around, pretending they're not. We're going to go ahead and move on. One of the issues we have actually kind of not covered very much is these pro-Palestinian protests at college campuses. We haven't really covered those a whole lot. So we're going to get at this. There was a week or so ago, there was a walkout over Israeli policies at the University of Chicago. And essentially, there's a disciplinary board, and there's 4 students who are facing not getting their diploma because of the actions they took during these protests. And so the students are going to protest some more and go ahead and get arrested to protest that these actions have consequences, right? Words have consequences. Isn't this one of these things the left has told us for the last 10 years? And now that they're actually facing some consequences, which we'll talk about some consequences here in a bit, some other consequences other than, you know, not getting to walk across the stage, getting kicked out of your university. So there's some real consequences.
Yeah, there's some real consequences happening over that. Well, I'm a little upset about what's happening in response to it. They're basically, a lot of these campuses are writing policies that abridge First Amendment rights of people if they make statements that are, I'm trying to remember the terminology, fiery rhetoric about Israel or Zionism or Jewish religion or all the rest of that. And that's protected speech. If it's a private college, you know, they can make whatever rules they want. But if it's a public college, and in essence, all of these are really public colleges because they get taxpayer funding. I mean, they're printing the money or taxing the money to support these people doing this stuff. And there was a hilarious comment, and I wish I could attribute it to someone, that said, isn't it amazing how all these campus protests and walkouts and sit-ins and riots and everything happen right around finals time? So that you know, they couldn't possibly sit for their final because they were doing important things. They were doing important things, protesting. And the other thing is that you'll notice that, and I'm not saying, you know, Israel's right. I think Israel's right to respond to what happened, and we could argue about, you know, setting the stage and the Palestine mess and all the rest of that, and who was on first and who responded and all the rest of that. But when you look at, I think you can determine who is in the right, not on the right, but in the right, and who is in the wrong by this one question. Who is wearing a mask? Who is hiding their identity? And you'll notice that the people who are in support or against some of the vicious stuff that the pro-Palestinian people are doing are to have their faces uncovered. They're not worried about being identified, although they probably should be, because these people are mean. And the people who are doing all of this stuff are masked up and hiding their identities. So, and that was the same thing that I said, which is why I called the Antifa folks punks, because they're all wearing masks. And so, you know, if you're doing something that you're proud of, why hide who you are?
Because they don't want their dad to see and stop sending checks. That's why those. That's why that's happening. But let's be clear: protesting is perfectly within your right, and I don't even really care what you're saying. But occupying buildings, preventing people from taking their tests, making it so people can't freely come into to and from the campus.
Physically threatening people.
Those are the differences.
Violence, you know, threatening violence. That's assault. You know, if you threaten somebody with bodily harm, that's assault. People think assault is when you physically touch someone. That's battery. And as a matter of fact, if assault is bad enough, it can be battery. So it's a violation of a basic criminal act, and that's what's been going on. And I think next we're going to talk about some real consequences.
Some real consequences. Let's go ahead and move on. Employers are now reluctant to hire those who are publicly protesting and putting their names on documents, and says we're not going to hire these people because why would you? Is the question. Why are you going to hire people who have clearly demonstrated that they're willing to put their personal views ahead of the views of the business, when you're being paid to put during your 8 hours or whatever it is, your personal views are secondary. That's just how the world works. Well,
you have a right to hold whatever political view you want, but when you're doing things that are patently illegal and fomenting violence and keeping people from going about their business, because in essence, when you're at school, that's your job. Your job is to get that degree so that you can use it as a way to get your foot in the door so that you can make a living. And if you prevent other people from doing that, you're basically sabotaging their work. Now, there's a fine line here again, because you know, if all they're doing is exercising their First Amendment rights to say whatever they want to do, and gathering in a public place to do that, and not threatening people with violence or preventing them from going to their work or their school or whatever it is, that's completely okay. But if you demonstrate that you're not going to be civil, let's just say civil, which is where civilized came from, civilization, in your interaction with others, and choose not to fulfill your contract, which is to go to school and work and get good grades and graduate, then how can your employer predict that you will be a valuable employee? Now, I want to hire people with opinions that differ from me. Most people try to hire people that are exactly like themselves. And when you do that, a halo effect, when you do that, you end up with a bad organization.
Yeah, you end up with a bubble.
You want people that will call bullshit. No, I can't say that on the air, can I?
We'll edit that.
Yeah, bullpucky on you. You know, when you're having brainstorming meetings, you don't want people to just kowtow. You want people to say, no, that's not going to work. That's a crazy idea. You guys are just so close to it, you're not seeing it. You want those kind of people. But you don't want people who threaten other people and prevent other people from going about their lawful, rightful acts.
I just want to point out, John, that 4 years ago, we were talking about cancel culture, right? Yeah. And he says, that's not cancel culture, it's consequence culture. Well, this is a different version of consequence culture. They're not canceling anybody. You can go off and say what you want. You can go off social media, but no one's going to hire you because you're displayed that you're not civil.
Yeah, and the thing about it is social media, you know, in the old days, you know, when there was microfilm in newspapers, you had to work really hard to track down somebody's history of an act that might make you want to question associated with them or hiring them. But social media lasts forever. You know, you can delete your account and all the rest of that. Well, somebody will have that post. Somebody will have that email. Somebody will have that text, and it will follow you for the rest of your life.
And I think that they're telling us inside is to move on. So
No.
we've got Richard Fields from the field, from Reports from the Field tonight, and we're talking about history. History repeats, but it does not necessarily repeat, but it does rhyme. So let's see what Richard has to say this week.
I'd love to hear from Mr. Fields.
Hi, this is Richard Fields with this week's Report from the Fields. Paraphrasing Mark Twain, history does not repeat, but it does rhyme. The rhyming we are seeing points to a repeat of World War I and II, only this time it will probably be nuclear. Except in hindsight, neither World War I nor World War II had a particular starting point. The hindsight starting point for World War I was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand of Serbia, which had to do with an attempt to unite Bosnia and Herzegovina with Serbia. There were two opposing alliances at the time. The Triple Entente, consisting of France, Britain, and Russia, which was also allied with Serbia. The other main alliance was the Central Powers, consisting of Italy, Germany, and Austria-Hungary. The assassination of the Archduke took place on June 28, 1914. In response, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. That caused Russia to mobilize because of their alliance with Serbia. But remember, Germany was allied with Austria-Hungary, so they declared war on Russia and France. Britain, which was allied with France and Russia, then declared war on Germany. This all happened within about 6 weeks. Later, due to the perfidy of Woodrow Wilson, the United States, who had no dogs in this European fight, entered the war on the side of Britain and France. In World War II, the alliances were Germany, Italy, and Japan versus ultimately pretty much the rest of the world. Germany, resentful of the peace treaty imposed upon them from World War I at Versailles, elected Hitler, who promptly invaded Poland, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. He tried to defeat Britain in the air with the Battle of Britain. Meanwhile, Japan had been busy with military expansion in Asia since the early 1930s. They invaded Manchuria, French Indochina, China, Korea, and India. And remember, they were allied with Germany and Italy. By 1937, the United States had terminated its commercial treaty with Japan and tightened its Export Control Act. One result of the U.S. trade war initiatives was cutting off a large source of Britain's access to petroleum necessary to fight a war. In response, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, bringing the U.S. into a second world war where, again, we had no dogs in the fight. Today, the alliances are the North American Treaty Organization, NATO, consisting of most of Western Europe and the United States. On the other side is an alliance of Russia and China, with a lot of cooperation from Iran, India, and possibly the OPEC countries. Most of the rest of the world are looking to see which direction the wind will blow. The Obama administration, CIA, covertly backed a coup in Ukraine, which deposed the duly elected president of Ukraine, who was aligned with Russia, more aligned with Russia than the West. Later, discussions with the new Ukraine government, including admitting Ukraine into the UN or into NATO in response to Russia's into NATO. In response, Russia massed troops on the borders of Ukraine. The Biden administration, along with Britain, actively torpedoed ongoing peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, leading to the current proxy war which Ukraine is losing. Now, people who run the Biden administration have okayed allowing Ukraine to use US manufactured missiles to attack the interior of Russia. Meanwhile, Biden's handlers have doubled down on Trump's trade sanctions on China. Remember, China is Russia's new best friend. The rhymes with history are there. Step by step, we are escalating a conflict. And once again, we have no dogs in this fight. Unfortunately, we are getting the rhyming part. World War II will not be fought with M15s, tanks, jet fighters, or bazookas. It could very well be fought with nuclear weapons. Libertarians know that other than a few weapons manufacturers and battlefield medical suppliers, we all lose from war. In World War III, we could possibly lose permanently. This is Richard Fields with this week's Report from the Fields. See you again next week, I hope.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah.
On that positive note.
Yeah, well, yeah, on that positive note, let's kind of move on because get some stuff that does repeat or rhyme from history. In Belgium, the surging far right is risking making Belgium even more ungovernable. Now, the question that whenever these kind of things come up is they never seem to ask is, why is the far right surging? What failures have the left, the center, whatever you want to call it, what are their failures that have caused the far right to surge? Why are so many people feeling left out from, government services, from the culture, from society, whatever you want to call it? Why are so many feeling left out that they're actually having to go to the right to feel welcome?
Well, I think first labeling, people far right. Some of them have pretty far right views about, you would call it far right about immigration, but Belgium's a mess. I mean, it's such a mess that they're actually talking about splitting the country up into at least two places. The places that are more conservative, you could call them right, and the places that are more, I guess, left. I hate those terms, right?
Yeah, it makes no sense.
But it makes no sense at all. You could, for fun, say there's the people on the right and those that are left. But, I'm not going to say that because people on the right are crazy too. But Belgium has, in parliamentary government, you have to make coalitions. Maybe it'd be great if we had a parliamentary government here so that they would never get anything done and they could never form a government. But despite the fact that it takes them sometimes 2 years to form a government, in this case it might be 3 or never, I think the idea that these parts of this country, that speak a different language and have a different culture and a different view on life are not one country is a great idea. And I think, we're kind of doing that here. There's a bunch of people in Oregon that decided they want to be part of Nevada. There's a bunch of people, like basically everything east of Sacramento, down through Bakersfield and east of LA, probably needs to be, part of Nevada as well. So if people can't, agree about the basic facts of life, whether it should be high taxes or low taxes, big government or little government, and then one faction takes control and imposes his will on other people, why not split it up? It's a great idea. Yeah. And the scary thing is that isn't the Belgians also pretty much run the EU behind closed doors, because isn't the EU headquartered in Brussels?
Yeah, but it's headquartered in Brussels, but the real power is in Germany. It's the economic power of Germany really runs the EU.
Well, it's the economic power, but the political power.
But it's all Germany.
Huh?
Germany really runs the EU. Yeah. Germans love their bureaucracy. Right? Yeah. They put it in Brussels so people wouldn't notice that Germany's really running the EU. It's the Fourth Reich, my friend. Yeah. Okay, so one of the 100th anniversary of one of America's worst labor laws happened in 1924. John, this is one that it hits libertarians right in the heart, right? This is one of these things that we really despise, is because it's really set up this immigration failure that we are watching right now.
Yeah. It's virtually impossible to the Byzantine nature of immigration law makes it virtually impossible for somebody to go through the process to become a U.S. citizen. And you know, as much as people on the right talk about the negatives of immigration, all the studies show that people, more entrepreneurs come from the entrepreneurial class come from immigrants, more scientists, more doctors, all the rest of that. I hang out in coffee houses where second generation people from Pakistan and India and Saudi Arabia and all these other countries are in medical school because their parents came here with nothing and worked 3 different jobs and made sure their kids studied really hard.
All right, John, we got less than 2 minutes left, and I want to cover these last two subjects, so I'm going to interrupt you. There's one, California is arguing that acquiring firearms is not a constitutional right. This is something California's legislature is actually trying to make an argument. And how many times we're going to allow them to just ignore the Constitution, reinterpret the Constitution is beyond
about
me.
1 gun a month. Yeah.
And something that's actually even worse, John, is the California legislature is trying to put a limit on how much office space a worker can clean in an hour. They're expected to clean. And I have been an office janitor. I have emptied trash cans, vacuumed floors, cleaned office bathrooms. There is no reason for anybody else to be involving themselves into.
Well, the SEIU, it's the SEIU. They're backing it, and they're simply doing it so that they can admit more people to the union and get more power than they already have, and they have all the power on the planet right now. So, yeah, and you know, the idea that you can look at the square footage of a place and decide how long it takes, you know, because you've done it and I've done it, that's not what determines it. There are some places that might be 2,000 square feet that you can clean in a minute and a half, and others that are 150 square feet that it takes you an hour and a half. Yeah. So the idea that you're going to let the government set these kind of standards is insane. And if you think businesses are failing now, wait till they have to eat this cost.
This is crazy. We've been watching over the last 20 years as California just increase costs, and consumer pays all costs. So your costs are going to go up. Your costs are going to go up for the janitor, to pay for the janitor, and you're not going to notice. You're going to be complaining about, oh, corporates and corporations and evil corporations and capitalism, and instead it's this constant drumbeat of a couple bucks here, a couple bucks there, but after 20 years, you're talking real money. A lot of it, because our cost of living is out of control.
Absolutely.
We are out of time, John.
Wow, well done.
That was well done. Thank you for being here, John. Thank you for watching. Thank everybody in there for working hard. Please remember to love everybody, and we will see you next week, and have a good night.